What's going on, guys? This is Andrew from Cascade Tutoring. In today's video, we're going to talk about linear equations in two variables and as it relates to the SAT. So the most important thing in this section is it's a three-step process. The first thing we're going to recognize is we have one equation that has two variables. We are then going to we're going to compare the original equation with a new equation. So oftentimes they'll give you a question like this on the screen. 1/8 x plus 1/4 y equals 10. You're not going to be asked to solve for x and y. You're going to be asked to solve for the value of 2x plus 4y. If this is the case on the SAT, what we're looking for is we want to be able to see is there a single number that multiplies or divides the original equation to get to the new equation. So we'll have to do some math in our head. If it's not totally transparent, that's totally fine. In this situation, if we take both of these numbers and we multiply them by 16, so 1/8 and 1/4, let me actually put the parentheses around this. Cool. So what is 16 times 1/8? Well, 16 times 1/8 is 2x. 1/4 times 16 is 4y. And that is equal to, well, what's 16 times 10? That's 160. So if you get something like this that looks a little bit weird and they don't ask you to solve for x and y, you say, well, this is my first equation, and I'm trying to get to this expression here. Is there a single number that multiplies or divides these things to get to this? And if that's true, that's what we do. One other piece I want to talk about before we get into Desmos is parallel and perpendicular lines. So just a reminder, let me do this in a different color. Parallel lines are two lines that never touch, right? If they never touch, they always have the same slope, okay? They're going to have the same slope, comma, different y-intercept. The reason for that is if we have the same slope and the same y-intercept, we actually have the same line. So if we have the same line, it is not parallel, it is the same line. So to make a parallel line, for example, if we're given something like this, the slope of that line is 2. The question might be, write a line that is parallel to y equals 2x plus 6. Well, the slope of that line is 2, so therefore, a line that is parallel to that is that. There could be an infinite number of correct solutions here, but that is a solution because it has a different y-intercept in the same slope. Perpendicular lines cross at a 90-degree angles. This has the inverse slope. So for example, if the slope is equal to negative 1/8, the perpendicular slope to that is, so the perpendicular slope to that is 8/1, or simply just 8. Okay, so parallel and perpendicular lines. So let's dive into some of these questions and let's actually skip down to some of the ones that are actually going to give you a harder time. So we can look at this one real quick before we get to that. So it says line K is defined by y equals negative 17/3x plus 5. Line J is perpendicular to line K in the xy plane. What is the slope of line J? Well, we know the slope of line K is negative 17/3. Again, perpendicular is the inverse, so we would just say the slope of line J is equal to 3/17. So the positive version of that and the flipped over version of that, okay? So that's a difficulty 2 question. That just requires that you know and memorize that piece. Here's a difficulty 2 question as well. So they're going to ask you, the table shows 4 values x and their corresponding y values. There is a linear relationship between x and y. Which of the following equations represents this relationship? Now, as I've said before, we can go through and do the algebra part of this. This will take a long time. So what we want to do is we want to use Desmos. When in doubt, use Desmos. Okay, so you come to this problem. You're going to open your Desmos app. And what we're going to do is we're going to create a table. So in the top left-hand corner, we're going to click table, and then we're going to put in the values. So we have -6, -3, 3, and 6. And then we have 65, 56, 38, 29. Okay, so there are all of our points here. Now, once I put them into the table, top left-hand corner, you're going to click linear regression because this is a line, and it's going to give you this. Okay, so let's memorize this. I'll put it back on the other screen. Y equals negative 3x plus 47. So we have y equals negative 3x plus 47. We don't want this. This is what makes this a level 2 question. We don't want this in slope-intercept form. We want it into point-slope form, or sorry, standard form. So the way we do this is we're going to move this around. Okay, so I'm going to add 3 to both sides. So we have 3x plus y equals 17. Well, there's our answer. Okay, dang it, we don't have that answer here. So what is the correct answer to this? Well, which one of these is equivalent to this? Is there a number, so going back to the original one, is there a number that I can multiply my first equation by to get to my second equation? Well, if I take this and multiply it by a 3, we get 9x plus 3y equals 141. A. Okay, so that is how you use Desmos with the linear equations with 2 variables.